Okay, here I am back with the appropriate classes. Now, in comparing these passages in the first movement of the Archduke Trio, where the triplets and the little shakes occur, starting on and so on. So I'm going to go to the third one because it's the one that I seem to have the most problems with yesterday, that involved that interesting passage that started with I believe, an A seventh. Yes. And then this diminished chord and then back to D. So I was really making a big deal of when I chose to go to third and when I chose to go to fourth based on hand comfort and a sense of ease. And should I say, I'm not surprised that the fingering X number of years ago is exactly the same, because the principles were the same. I was looking for comfort, I was looking for simplicity, didn't want my hand to be constricted, which is untrustworthy under fire, didn't want my hand to have to extend unnecessarily, which is also untrustworthy under fire and can lead to all kinds of complications. So I'm reasonably happy that the fingering ends up jibing, those two versions. The electronic version I had here and the version I worked with before are the same. Now, as to reinforcing it, I have to remind myself, as I did, that I had discovered the harmonic relationship. I also pointed out the essential sense of memory or good knowledge of your material, particularly when the material moves quickly. So I'm going to try to see if I can recreate any of that without looking at the score, just to see how much of what I told myself yesterday I remember. Well, I forgot to tell myself, as I recall, not about the notes I got, but about the fact that I only wanted to use the fourth finger position on the repeated moment here. So, third to fourth. This is where I'm making that mistake. I keep wanting to go to three. That's where I have to go to three. So here's the one that goes to three. Now a bunch of twos. Three, four, four, four. As you can see, 24 hours can make a big difference. I still have a recollection of what I was thinking about, but obviously it's not fresh in my mind. This is a very weird little thing with this really contracted moment where you only go down a whole step from white note to white note. So my whole tendency and desire is to go to third finger. And I have to thwart that desire and tell myself to go to second finger, so I'll end up on G on my thumbs. Here it is. Now, fourth, fourth, so, keep wanting to do it. Maybe some of you will recognize the experience. Here. Fourth. And the reassurance of that left hand at the end, it's kind of got it, made it all the way down to the bottom. astonishing how many little minute traps there are. And for those of you who have played the piece, you might think, what's he struggling with? I'm actually, quite frankly, struggling with myself, because I know it's in there. I know there's a simplicity. I even know that there's a justification for each of the fingering choices I make. And yet, when I try it ever so slightly too quickly, or without thought, or without planning, or without insisting on comfort, the impatience gets me. I end up in a sort of a wayward situation. So let's try it again. I'm going to try to outlast my own impatience. Yep. Fourth. 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 Feels better. I've got to remind myself of the places where I have to remind myself. Here, 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 and then when it starts to repeat. So, rather than going to the top, which is one of the aspects I mentioned yesterday that is getting in my way, I'm going to review this. Interesting thing is the descending intervals between 3 and 1. Here's A to G. Here's G to E. Obviously G to E feels more natural. The one just before that feels less so. This one is C sharp to A. Very, very comfortable with the long finger on the black note and the thumb here. So I have three ones in a row. Now I can remind myself of that. Ah, yes. The most comfortable one, the least comfortable and most contracted, the moderate one. So maybe I should have done that all along. In other words, find that place where there are 3 third finger groups in a row. Then it's going to change. So the one just before that, with the 3 to 4, now 3 and 3, and now we're back from octave to octave. So now that feels as if there's a groove in there. And then of course it changes there to the diminished chord. So I think we're starting to cook. 3, 3, 3, 4, fourth again. Okay, so am I going to repeat this endlessly here? No, I think it's potentially counterproductive. I may end up going on, but I am going to reinforce the thought one more time, or a few more times if I need to. Here's the fourth, the 3 interesting thirds, 3s rather. The 4, the 4. Now, this is not in any way tempo, but right now that's not my issue. I just want to make sure I have a fairly decent sense of what's going on. I will go back and do the other 2, because even though they are simpler of design, I don't remember them. Okay, keys in B flat, the key of the piece. This happens to be a B flat arpeggio. Whoa. And then D. And then finally, the thing I've been doing. So, the thing about the thing, when it's not a 7th chord, or diminished chord, the intervals are pretty standard. If you've got a triad, it's going to be a third, and a fourth, a third, and a fourth. So the asymmetry at least gives you a sense of where you are in the octave. Here's the 4th. Best accommodated with a 4th finger. How about that? And the advantage of this one is a 4th finger black note to a white thumb note. there's another use for fourth finger down here to give me the white to the black note here. The third would really be uncomfortable. So fourth. No big deal. Okay. That's something. In other words, I could be spending time drilling it now, but the logic of the fingering appeals to my body and is simple for my mind. So I'm going to assume that's going to be a reasonable thing. And the D major one, need the fourth here for the fourth interval, and also for that white to black. Okay, so that sticks. What'll I do about making it faster? Well, I wanted to get past this hurdle. In other words, I wanted some sense of what I'm trying to accomplish. In a sense that sooner or later it will stick, and it's actually starting to stick. So we look ahead. Some scales. No big deal for the scales. Some of the things that are problematic to me might not be problematic to you, and vice versa. So we'll see what happens. There is a moment here, measure 106. Actually, let's start. My edition says rehearsal number D. Rehearsal numbers are very useful if you don't have measure numbers. I've got printed out or handwritten rehearsal numbers, measure numbers, because my partners need them or I need them, and it saves an enormous amount of time if you can find the right place. So anyway, what we have here is a bunch of 16th notes. I should point out that not all of the music I'll be working on, but much of the music is in the public domain. I happen to have downloaded this electronic version from IMSLP, that wonderful database of music, and CD sheet music is another source. There are a number of sources of public domain music, and if you choose to, and I advise you to do so, if you're following on with any of this, take a look at the music. I might even post the public domain music on my site. When I do things like Prokofiev, I may not be able to because those are not in the public domain. You can still look over my shoulder at some of the scores, but I'll leave it to you to find some good sources for yourselves. In any event, I'll describe this. There's a lot of octave leaps, as you can see, and it's going to be rather fast. The most important thing is to not stretch, to keep your hand at ease, and to recognize what aspects of the gesture are simple, what group naturally together. For example, you open your hand and reach to the lowered octave, that's probably quite inappropriate. Number one, the first note of each beat is marked staccato. Call it non-legato if you will. You really don't have to make a big effort to make it non-legato. Just let go. And then the gesture you use has to get your hand comfortably up. For me, I almost never, if I can remind myself of it, and I stress this with my students, I try not to look at my fifth finger if it's leaping a lot to itself alone. If I look at the lower part of my hand, in other words, if I concentrate on where my thumb goes, I know where my fifth finger is going to be because I'm well enough calibrated to know that my fifth finger knows what an octave feels like, or my hand knows what an octave feels like above my thumb. So I look more in the middle of the keyboard, and lo and behold, it's a B flat arpeggio. How far does it go? I have to tell myself that. It goes to B flat. Up, that's so. It should be noted, if I chose to, a lot of purists think that we should only play Beethoven exactly the way he divides it, the way he fingers it, the way he gives to certain hands certain notes. In this case, it would be entirely possible to do something like that, to redivide the hands. As it happens, it's fun enough and easy enough for me to not do that. for small-handed people, when they have the ensuing passage, which is full of these ninths and triplets, and then tenths even, it's really, really important to let go, to feel an easy choreography. And so on. So, I think that should be no particular problem anyway. Let me take a breath, and I'll be right back.